Hi, I'm Vivek Nadrajan. I'm also called TN Vivek by my colleagues. I'm a chief scientist here at CSIR IGIB, and my lab is situated here in the Mathura Road campus. I work broadly in the area of skin biology, but my interests span in understanding how biology functions at the organism level, at the level of the cells, and also at the molecular level. Of late, I've been interested in understanding how the pigment producing cells, which are present in the skin of our body, function, and it has relations to the way the diseases in skin manifest, such as vitiligo and melanoma. Of recent interest is actually my expansion into areas where genetic basis of rare diseases is something I'm interested in modeling in both cell-based model systems involving patient-derived iPSCs and also zebrafish as a model system. And I would like to investigate how the mechanisms of disease emerge across these different models to understand more about the disease and to provide a intervention that's more sustainable. Yeah. So then today there's a lot of talk about Make in India. I should really say that I am a prototype of a Make in India scientist. All my studies have been in India all through and through, right from my school studies, my college. Subsequent to my college, I went to do an integrated PhD program at the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. That really shaped the way I think to this day, and I hope it's going to continue with me forever. And subsequent to doing a PhD, I decided to stay back in the country, and I worked with Dr. Rajesh Gokhale back then at the National Institute of Immunology, and I started to work on a new problem that he was very excited at that point in time to address what happens in people with vitiligo. And that's when I really graduated from really looking at signal transduction pathways and how cells operate, how diseases come about, right? So that transition is something that happened in my PhD to postdoc change that happened during my stint here in the country. And subsequent to my postdoc stint with Dr. Gokhale, I ended up being here at IGAB, working on the skin biology program, continuing many of the problems that had started earlier, and also in the way in the last 10 to 15 years that I've been here at IGAB, I've graduated from looking at only one aspect of the disease biology to looking at molecular and cellular attributes of the disease, and also taking it to the level of development and understanding how do these cells come about, how do these stay, and also integrating with the strength of IGAB in looking at the genomics and understanding how across evolutionary time scales pigment producing cells have evolved, how these programs are fine-tuned by the forces of nature, and what implication that it may have on diseases that affect skin is something that has been something that this homegrown scientist has discovered en route. It's been some 15 years, and in this journey with me, none of the work that I've done on my own. Each of the work that have actually emanated from the lab has been a collaboration of myself with the student, and it's actually that hand-holding that goes together where I handhold the student when they walk in, and I'm very happy to say that by the time they graduate out of the lab, they teach me a lot, and the confidence with which they speak about the problem makes me feel that now they are in charge. And that's when that I know that a program or a project that I started with them is actually taken its shape. And I'm very happy that in the last 15 years, some 12 students have graduated from my laboratory, and each of them having their own stories that has emanated with my contribution, and each of these collaborations have been a success in their own right. Right now, I have 8 students working with me, and each of them working on different areas in an overlapping and in a non-overlapping fashion, and with whom I would like to collaborate in the next future, and also groom the next future scientist of the country, with the expertise that I've acquired by being in the country as an homegrown scientist. I would like to pass on to some of my students who incidentally have actually gone to different parts of the country as well. Many of them decided to stay back. Some of them have gone to the Europe, many to the US, and some to the Japan, and they have taken forward their research in their own areas of their interest. And that's really been my journey here at IGE. So of the many things that are happening in the lab and that have happened in the past, one particular research that has actually been something that's been closest to my heart, and also something that we are very excited about, is how a produced embryo or a single cell embryo that's coming from half the genome from either of the parents really manifests into an individual adult with multitude of cells, each functioning on its own and also in sync with one another. So while it's a much larger question, what we tend to ask in the context of the biology of the skin are the pigment producing cells which come from neural crest, and we are interested in asking how the neural crest cells essentially code for multitude of these cells, and how do they attain the final mature state that they adopt in the final tissue. So the work that has actually led us into this is the discovery of a epigenetic code. Previously, we had identified a histone variant called H2AZ, and of late we are now interested in another variant called H3.3, and we think that positioning of these histones in separate and also in conjunction with one another in the nucleosome essentially codes or really marks the cell to take a particular identity, and that is something very exciting as it really tells us about the unity in diversity, as I like to put it. So while this has been the area of interest, but what really keeps me awake at night is actually something which is very different from this problem, and that is to do with how the genome maintains itself. While that may sound like a very tangential idea and tangential research, but there's something that's, according to me, an inherent part of the problem of biology, because the genome has to maintain itself and also allow differences to creep about so that, the biology functions in terms of evolution on a larger scale, yet maintaining the individual identity of the species. So in this context, there are two areas of research that are sort of emerged parallelly in the work that is ongoing, and that's something during pandemic we got into, and both of them essentially ask the same question. Coming from the work that I've been doing in the lab, the melanoma cells, which are the cancerous transformation of melanocytes, is an interesting problem because pretty much 80% of the cancers of melanoma come from defined mutations that activate certain genes because of mutations. And these mutations don't come from the characteristic UV-mediated signatures, but rather from, these mutations are activating type, but the origin of these mutations are not known. So how do these cells acquire these mutations and how are they selected for is an area of research that has excited me from the pigment producing cells perspective. From the point of view of coronavirus that a half a decade back we all encountered, the same problem is exciting because the coronavirus is a much larger virus. It has an RNA genome, and maintaining such a large RNA genome is a big problem to worry. And the virus seamlessly does it. And to an extent, that when one looks at the organization of the genome, these coronaviruses are pretty self-sufficient in terms of the variety of enzymes that they encode to maintain their genomic stability. And one of the key enzymes that maintains the stability of the genome is actually the proofreading polymerase, which many other small RNA viruses don't seem to have. So coronaviruses have these proofreading enzymes, which much like the DNA life forms, are able to recognize and keep any mismatched nucleotides that are incorporated. And this has multitude of problems. One immediate problem is that many of the antivirus, which are the nucleoside analogs, are inefficient in coronaviruses because of this enzyme, which recognizes and cleaves these mismatched nucleotides and throws them away, or a repair to take place. On the other hand, this is also important because such an enzyme allows for the stable genome on a large scale and thereby facilitating the virus to be more hardier to the human infection that it does. We'll be working on this proofreading enzyme, and we've looked at how these enzymes are acquired. Perhaps we have some clues now about a lateral acquisition from a eukaryotic host, very interestingly from an antiviral gene that humans and all other mammals seem to encode. And the acquisition of this enzyme and subsequent tuning that the viruses have done to make it function like a proofreading enzyme is something that we have investigated a lot in detail. We now know of a mechanism involving a zinc finger that recognizes a mismatch and then thereby activates this enzyme to bring about its RNA exonuclease activity, which maintains the genome along with the polymerase that does the extension. So this is something that has kept me awake in the recent past, and we like to sort of get a fairly clearer view of how this system functions in the near future. So what kept me excited in doing what I do? I don't have a single instance to tell you, but there have been multiple instances, and one of the instances that sort of captures me is this constant feature that I've had beautiful teachers who have, shaped my career and my thought process from very young age. I can think of the earliest is in class 3, where my science teacher walked up to me and, she told me, "Do you know what is it called in English?" And she was telling me because I was taught in Tamil, and then I graduated to learning in English medium, and she spent that extra time in telling me about how scientific concepts are detailed in English, just so that I don't miss out on the science by not knowing the language enough. So that was my first memory of someone with a background in science coming and exciting me with the whole area of science. And subsequently, I've had beautiful mentors who have not just told me how to do things, but also shown me by their own life as to what it really means to be thinking and doing science. I remember my high school science teacher giving me a lesson in humility, which also happens to be a good lesson in science. And she was confused about the right auricle and the right ventricle, right and left symmetry problem, because she was confused with the right and left of our own body part to that of what is there in front of you on the board. And the very fact that she graciously said, "This is a very well-known thing, it's just that I'm confused at this point in time," made me realize that, such a humility is a very fundamental feature of a scientist, and that one needs to take into account for being a good person first and then being a good scientist. So subsequently, I've had beautiful, wonderful teachers who have taught me multiple different things. More importantly, all of them taught me how to ask the right question. And when, if you ask the right question, half the problem is solved. And this not just, even not just with the high school, I've also had great teachers in my college who spent a lot of time, being with the young bunch of graduates, and they learned with us. And that gave us motivation and gave me motivation to pursue this as a career. If I want to pick up one point as a momentous time, which I would like to recollect in retrospect and say that that was a defining moment, and that is this. In my class 9, my chemistry teacher was passionately talking to us about carbon and its compounds, giving us comparisons between carbon as a coal and carbon as a diamond, telling us that chemistry tells us how things can be the same at the core, yet very different in their properties. And in that flow, she told that if you burn coal, you get carbon dioxide, and if you burn diamond, you get oxygen. And without waiting for a moment, I said, why? Both are made up of carbon. And she immediately smiled and said that this is the question I was looking forward to. And in retrospect, I realized that such small instances, which may have no meaning at that point in time, are also defining points in your life to make you realize that this is something that you enjoy doing. So that was my one snippet that really made me realize that that's an area, science, which is going to be a part of my future forever as my career and my passion both.